Have you ever wondered why the noise of a crowded room drains you, while solitude feels like a breath of fresh air? Why surface conversations feel empty, yet a single moment of true connection lights up your whole soul? If that sounds like you, then hear this: you are not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not awkward or antisocial. You're intuitive. What you've always thought was a flaw, your quiet nature, your intense inner world, your ability to feel everything, is actually your gift. Carl Jung, one of the fathers of modern psychology, didn't call it a disorder. He called it introverted intuition, a deep, almost mystical way of seeing the world. It's the ability to tune in to subtle energies, to sense the truth beneath the surface, to read between the lines even when no words are spoken. People like you, INFJs, INTJs, you're the pattern readers, the quiet visionaries, the ones who sit at the edge of a room and still know more than the ones doing all the talking. You were never meant to blend into this noisy world. You were built to see through it. So if you've ever felt like an outsider, maybe it's not because you didn't belong, but because you were meant to lead from within. This video, it's not just content, it's your mirror, a place to recognize the rare power that lives inside your quiet. Because sometimes silence isn't absence, it's awareness, it's depth, it's your superpower. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt the energy shift? Like before anyone speaks, you already know who's anxious, who's pretending to be confident, and who's just barely holding it together. You're not imagining that. That's your gift. You're not just observing life, you're decoding it. While most people get caught up in what's on the surface, the words, the smiles, the noise, you're tuned into something far deeper. You're reading what's unspoken, the subtle tension in someone's voice, the shift in posture, the energy that hits you before they even open their mouth. Carl Jung called this introverted intuition a rare form of deep, unconscious perception. It's not about guessing. It's about sensing what most people don't even realize exists. You are like a chess master in a room full of checkers players. Others react. You calculate. Others talk. You listen not just with your ears, but with your nervous system. And that sensitivity you carry, it's not weakness, it's awareness, it's insight. You feel like a radar scanning frequencies others can't detect. You spot the disconnect between what someone says and what their energy actually reveals. You know when something's off, not because of logic, but because you feel it before your mind can even explain why. And here's the truth: you don't need to prove this to anyone. You don't need credit or recognition. Because deep down, you already know what's real. You see things coming before they happen. You read the room while others are still talking about the weather. And you don't do it for power, you do it for protection, for peace, for truth. So the next time someone tells you, you're too quiet, too intense, too observant, smile. Because your silence isn't emptiness. It's data gathering, it's pattern recognition. It's a form of intelligence this world doesn't fully understand yet. You don't just see people, you see through them. And that right there is your superpower. Let's set the record straight. You're not antisocial. You're not cold. And no, you're definitely not boring. You're selectively social. And that's something this world still doesn't fully understand. You don't hate people, you just crave authenticity. Not the forced smiles, not the endless small talk, not the kind of connection that evaporates the moment the room empties. You crave depth, meaning, resonance. And if it's not there, you'd rather be alone unapologetically. There's this idea out there that solitude means something's wrong. That if you're alone, you must be lonely. But people like you know the truth. Solitude isn't isolation, it's incubation. It's where your creativity wakes up. It's where your soul stretches out and breathes. It's your sanctuary, not your sentence. Carl Jung once said, "The introvert is oriented toward the inner world. And for someone like you, that inner world isn't empty. It's alive. It's rich. It's where your best ideas are born, where you work through your thoughts, like walking through a sacred forest, one step, one insight, one truth at a time. While others lose themselves in crowded rooms and noisy timelines, you find yourself in silence. Think about it. How often have your greatest ideas, your clearest moments of truth arrived when you were completely alone, maybe on a walk in your room or sitting quietly with a cup of coffee? That's not a coincidence, that's alignment. You've learned something most people haven't. Being alone doesn't mean being incomplete. It means being in tune with your energy, your purpose, your boundaries. You don't seek likes or applause. You seek alignment, and that makes you rare. You could be standing in the middle of a crowd and still feel out of place, not because you're broken, but because you're not built for noise. You're built for meaning. So when people say, "Why are you so distant?" they don't realize you're not being cold. You're just conserving your energy, protecting your space, because not everyone deserves access to your presence, your solitude. It's not your weakness, it's your sacred weapon. In that space of stillness, you heal, you create. You reconnect with the version of yourself that existed before the world told you who you should be. You've mastered something most people avoid their whole lives: being with yourself, fully, completely, without distraction, without masks, without the need for validation. And that, my friend, is not emptiness, that's power. So the next time the world makes you feel strange for choosing peace over popularity, silence over noise, stillness over stimulation, just smile. Because while they chase attention, you choose awareness. And while they seek to be seen, you've already found yourself. Have you ever felt like you're watching life unfold around you? Not from the sidelines, but from a higher place of understanding, like you're both in the moment and also above it, observing it with clarity while others are swept away in chaos. That's not detachment, that's design. You see, you're not just someone who feels deeply or thinks strategically, you are both. You carry within you a powerful balance, the emotional depth of the INFJ and the sharp precision of the INTJ. And that balance, it's rare. It's what Carl Jung referred to as the functional axis, when your intuition partners with either feeling or thinking, creating an elevated, almost prophetic level of perception. You don't just live life, you engineer it. While most people are reacting to the world moment by moment, you're already 5 steps ahead. You sense what's coming, not because you're psychic, but because you've trained yourself to pay attention. You've built your inner world like a laboratory where emotions are data, silence is reflection, and every experience is a blueprint for something greater. You're not impulsive, you're intentional. You move with a quiet kind of power, not to impress, but to align. And that's what makes you different. You walk into a room and notice what others miss. You hear what isn't said. You feel the energy beneath the words. And then while others rush to act, to fix, to speak, you pause, you calculate, you build from the inside out. Some people will say you overanalyze. But here's the truth, you're not overanalyzing, you're constructing. Your mind is like an architect's table, constantly drafting possibilities, outcomes, responses, long before anything even happens. And when you finally speak, it lands. Because you've already run it through every level of your internal truth-checking system. You've measured the weight of the words. You've scanned the emotional consequences. You've examined the ripple effect, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved. And here's what they don't see. While the world races toward chaos, you are quietly shaping order. While others wait for something to happen, you're laying the foundation for what's next. This is your gift. You were never meant to live by default. You were meant to design your life deliberately, and in doing so become a calm within the storm. So if you've ever felt like you see too much, plan too far, or feel too intensely, take a breath and remember that's not a flaw. That's your architecture. You are both the observer and the creator, and that makes you unstoppable. Have you ever looked around and felt like the world is moving too fast, but your soul wants to move slower? Like everyone's rushing towards something, but no one really knows. What you scroll through your phone, you walk through the noise, you watch people chase likes, trends, and approval. And deep down, none of it speaks your language. That's not you being distant. That's your old soul showing itself. You weren't built for distractions. You were made for depth. You see beauty in the things most people overlook, the soft light through a window at sunrise, the way an old book smells like memory, a song lyric that hits a part of your heart you didn't even know was hurting. These moments, they matter to you, and they should. Carl Jung believed in something called the collective unconscious, a shared well of ancient wisdom symbols and truths that lives within all of us. But here's the thing, some people are more connected to it than others. People like you, you're not too emotional, you're attuned, you're not dramatic, you're awakening. You feel things that others brush past, not because you're weak, but because your spirit remembers what the world has forgotten: stillness, awareness, meaning. You've always been different. Even as a child, you asked the big questions. You saw through people. You felt the weight of injustice, the ache of beauty, the tension between what is and what should be. And sure, it's isolating sometimes. You feel like you're living in a time that doesn't match your rhythm, like your heart beats in a different century. But let me ask you something. What if you weren't meant to fit into this world? What if you were sent to help slow it down? To remind others that life isn't about the next notification, but about the present moment. To remind them that love isn't a performance, it's presence. That wisdom doesn't scream, it listens. That healing doesn't come from pretending everything's fine, but from honoring what's real. You're not here to keep up. You're here to wake up. And more importantly, to help others do the same, just by being yourself. You don't need a stage or a spotlight to be impactful. Sometimes the most powerful transformation happens when one quiet soul chooses not to follow the noise. So if you've ever felt too slow for this fast-paced world, take heart. You're not behind. You're ahead in the only way that matters spiritually, emotionally, and energetically. You're not broken, you're ancient, you're not disconnected, you're deeply aligned. And your presence, it's not a glitch in this timeline, it's a gift. So breathe deeply, walk slowly, and don't apologize for feeling everything so much. Because in a world that's forgotten how to feel, you are the reminder. Have you ever walked into a room and without saying a word, people noticed you, not because you were loud, not because you were trying to stand out, but because something in your presence spoke louder than noise ever could? That's not coincidence. That's your energy. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to compete for attention. You don't have to dress it up, post it online, or perform to be seen. Because your power, it's not in the volume, it's in the vibration. And that's what makes you different. You carry a calm that others can feel. A quiet confidence that doesn't demand the spotlight because it doesn't need it. Some people are magnetic because of their charisma. Others, like you, are magnetic because of your alignment. Carl Jung called this rare state the individuated self, the person who has faced their inner shadow, embraced both their flaws and their light, and emerged whole, integrated, grounded. And that inner harmony, it's powerful. Because when someone has done that level of soul work, you can feel it before you even know their name. You've probably had people open up to you instantly, strangers telling you things they've never told anyone, friends saying they feel safe around you, even if they can't explain why. That's the gift of presence. That's energy that doesn't try, it just is. You don't gossip, you don't compete, you don't need to prove anything. That's why your presence unsettles the performative and comforts the authentic. Because when someone hasn't faced themselves, they'll be confused by someone who has. Your silence isn't passive, it's powerful. It holds truth. It makes people reflect. And for some, that's magnetic. For others, that's terrifying. But either way, they feel you. You've learned how to hold your center even in chaos. And when you walk into a room, it's like your energy whispers, "I've seen the dark, and I made peace with it." And that changes everything. You don't need to say much. When you do speak, it lands. Because your words don't come from ego, they come from integration. You are not too quiet, you are tuned in. And the next time someone underestimates your silence, just remember, real power doesn't shout, it radiates. So keep holding your truth. Keep walking with grace. Because in a world addicted to filters and facades, real is the rarest frequency there is. And that frequency is you. Let's be honest, fame never really impressed you. You've never cared about how many followers someone has, what their highlight reel looks like, or whether they've got a blue checkmark by their name. Because none of that speaks to your soul. You're not here to be seen, you're here to serve. You don't want attention, you want alignment. While the world races after likes, trends, and temporary applause, you find yourself searching for something deeper, not the spotlight, but the spark, not validation, but value. And that's what sets you apart. You're wired for purpose. INFJs often feel this as an urge to heal, to hold space for others, to help someone make sense of their pain, to gently bring light into places most people are afraid to go. INTJs feel it as the fire to build, to create systems, to solve deep problems, to shape something visionary and lasting, not for ego, but for impact. Carl Jung described this as the journey toward individuation, becoming who you were always meant to be, not by conforming, but by listening to the call of your inner truth. That calling, it's not always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper, a quiet tug in your chest that says, there's something more. You might not have all the words for it yet, but you feel it that you're here for something bigger, something meaningful. And that longing, it's not confusion, it's clarity trying to break through. And yes, it can feel lonely, because when you choose purpose over popularity, not everyone understands. People might think you're distant or too serious or even hard to read. But what they don't realize is that while they chase crowds, you're walking your path with intention. You weren't made to follow, you were made to shift the collective, to bring something real into a world obsessed with appearances. You're not here to impress, you're here to awaken. So when others are busy curating a perfect image, you're out there doing the inner work, the healing, the building, the listening, the quiet creation of something meaningful that may not be seen today, but will echo far beyond your presence. And one day someone will stumble upon your words, your work, your energy, and it will change something in them. It will help them feel less alone. It will help them remember. That's legacy. So if you've ever felt like you're moving slower than the world, like your dreams don't fit into a neat social media box, good, because your mission was never meant to be flashy. It was meant to be felt. And those who are here to feel will always find you. Have you ever looked at someone and just known something wasn't right? They smiled, they said all the right things, but something in you whispered, that doesn't match. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. You see, you don't just interact with people, you read them. Instinctively, silently, effortlessly, and it's not some vague sixth sense. It's not magic. It's not even something you try to do. It's a subconscious system, one Carl Jung understood deeply, where your mind collects microdata, constantly tone of voice, eye movements, shifts in energy, hesitation between words. Most people walk into a room and notice who's talking the loudest. You're tuned into the one sitting silently in the corner. The one whose energy feels heavy, the one smiling, but you can feel the sadness beneath it. This isn't imagination, it's awareness. Your nervous system picks up what others ignore. It doesn't wait for proof, it picks up signals before the mind has time to rationalize them. You're absorbing patterns, emotional, behavioral, energetic, and your intuition weaves it all together before the surface even cracks. And here's the powerful part. You don't use this to judge. You use it to protect. Because once you see someone clearly, their intentions, their truth, their contradictions, you don't attack them. You simply adjust your distance. You don't confront drama. You sidestep it. You don't call out every lie. You just stop offering your trust. Because you've learned that not everyone deserves full access to your energy, and not everyone can meet you where you live in truth. People often say, "How did you know that?" And you don't always have an answer, because it's not something you figured out, it's something you felt. Carl Jung described this process as unconscious intelligence, a kind of psychological radar that operates beneath awareness. It's the gift of the intuitive introvert to listen to what isn't said, to sense what isn't shown. And yes, it can be exhausting. You've walked out of conversations feeling emotionally drained, not because of what was said, but because your body absorbed everything that wasn't. The fake laughter, the hidden tension, the subtle manipulation, it registered. That's why small talk wears you out. Why you crave honesty, transparency, connection. You weren't made to float on the surface, you were made to dive deep. And the more honest you are with yourself, the clearer you see in others. So no, you're not too sensitive. You're not overthinking. You're noticing, and that's your strength. In a world where so many people wear masks, you have the rare ability to see behind them, not to judge what's there, but to decide what belongs in your space and what doesn't. That's not cold, that's wisdom, that's discernment, that's you. Have you ever sat with yourself in silence and asked the kind of questions that most people spend their whole lives avoiding? Questions like, who am I really? Not the titles, not the roles, not the version of you that other people expect, but the real you buried beneath the noise. If you have, then you already know. That kind of questioning isn't easy. It's not peaceful, it's not pretty, it's honest. You don't walk through life assuming you've got it all figured out. You walk through life with a kind of sacred doubt. Always searching, always turning the mirror inward. And sure, some may call it overthinking, but those people have probably never stood in the middle of a soul storm, that deep, overwhelming wave of self-awareness where every belief, every identity, every assumption starts to fall apart. You're not lost. You're deconstructing. You're peeling back layers that were never really you, layers handed down by family, culture, trauma, and survival. You're not breaking down, you're breaking through. Carl Jung believed that this kind of self-inquiry is not madness, it's awakening. It's the soul pulling you toward individuation, the process of becoming whole. And yes, it's uncomfortable. It hurts. It's lonely at times. Because the truth often demands we let go of comfort. It asks us to confront things we'd rather avoid. It challenges the stories we've told ourselves, just to feel safe. But you're not interested in safety built on illusion. You want truth, even when it cuts, even when it burns, even when it leaves scars. You don't want the kind of peace that comes from pretending everything's fine. You want the kind of peace that comes from knowing who you really are. And in that process, you've probably grieved. Not just people, but versions of yourself that never had space to grow. You've probably looked in the mirror and wondered what parts of me are real and what parts are just survival. That's not weakness, that's courage. Because most people distract, you reflect. Most people suppress, you explore. Most people settle, you seek. You're not chasing answers to impress anyone. You're looking for alignment, for clarity, for a sense of self that isn't built on what you should be, but on what you've always been. So if you're in the middle of a storm right now, if everything feels uncertain, if your identity feels like it's unraveling, breathe. You're not falling apart. You're waking up. This is your becoming. And once you emerge from this, not as someone new, but as someone true, you'll radiate a kind of peace that no one can take away from you. Because it's not performance, it's presence. It's not a mask, it's you. Let's talk about something most people avoid: the darkness within. Not the kind you see in horror movies or dramatic breakdowns. I'm talking about the quiet shadow inside of you, the anger you were told to hide, the guilt you never voiced, the grief you carried in silence, the version of you that felt too much, too broken, or too hard to love. Most people run from their shadow. They distract, perform, pretend. They smile while suppressing. They stay busy so they don't have to feel. Because the thought of turning inward, of truly facing what's buried, is terrifying. But you did something rare. You turned around. You looked your shadow in the eye and said, "I see you. I'm not afraid anymore." That moment, that's when your healing began. You sat with the parts of yourself no one else could hold, not even you at times. You didn't deny your pain. You listened to it. You didn't silence your shame. You asked it what it needed. You met your fears not with judgment, but with compassion. And that right there is what Carl Jung called the path to true individuation, not by pretending to be light, but by making the darkness conscious. You don't find peace by erasing your wounds. You find it by walking through them layer by layer and realizing they're not your enemy. They're your map. Because the peace you carry now, the stillness others feel in your presence, it wasn't handed to you. It was earned. You crawled through your own inner hell and came out whole. You didn't destroy the dark parts of yourself. You integrated them. You learned that your rage had a message, that your sorrow had a story, that your shame held wisdom. And somewhere along that journey, you stopped asking what's wrong with me and started asking what happened to me. And that shift, that single shift, unlocked everything. So if someone tells you today that you're so calm, so grounded, so wise, they may never know what it cost you to get here. They'll never see the nights you cried in silence, the parts of yourself you forgave, the voices you had to silence just to hear your own truth. But you know what it means to rebuild yourself from the inside out, not to impress the world, but to finally feel whole. You're not soft, you're sacred. You are steel wrapped in silence, light carved from darkness. You don't need applause for your growth. You've already met the only person who truly matters, the you behind the mask. So no, you didn't just survive your shadow, you turned it into your strength. And that's not just a chapter, that's your origin story. Let's talk about something that often gets misunderstood: imagination. When most people hear that word, they think of distraction, escapism, fantasy. They assume that if you're lost in thought, you're trying to avoid reality. But for you, it's different. You don't drift into imagination to escape life. You go there to reshape it. Your mind isn't a playground. It's a blueprint, a quiet, sacred space where vision is born. You don't daydream for fun. You architect from within. Carl Jung called this active imagination a bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind. He believed it was one of the most powerful tools for self-transformation, not just creativity, but prophecy. A way your deeper self communicates with you through images, feelings, and symbols. And here's what's wild. You've probably been doing it your entire life without even realizing it. You sit in silence and see futures that haven't happened yet, conversations that haven't been spoken, places you've never been, a version of yourself that feels more real than who you've been told to be. You feel it. You live it long before it takes shape in the physical world. And most people might dismiss that. They'll call it wishful thinking. They'll tell you to come back down to earth. But what they don't understand is this: every breakthrough begins in the invisible. Every great invention, every healing moment, every spiritual awakening, it all started as a vision. And your mind, it's full of them. You've imagined healing that hasn't happened yet, and then you built the steps to get there. You've imagined a version of your life where you're aligned, grounded, at peace, and piece by piece, you've started walking toward it. That's not fantasy, that's spiritual architecture. You don't just think, you design. And that's why your imagination feels so vivid, because it isn't random. It's a compass. It's your soul whispering, this is who you could become. If you trust me, of course it can feel lonely. You see things other people don't. You dream bigger, feel deeper, move slower. But here's the truth, you're not disconnected from reality. You're ahead of it. You're not delusional, you're tuned in. And every time you honor that vision, every time you sit quietly and build in your mind, you bring it closer to your reality. So the next time someone tells you to stop dreaming, just smile. Because while they wait for permission to live their truth, you've already built the blueprint inside your heart, your spirit, your soul. And step by step, you're bringing it to life. You've probably never seen yourself as a leader in the traditional sense. You're not loud, you're not chasing titles, you don't stand on tables or demand to be heard. And yet, people feel you. When you speak, others listen, not because you talk the most, but because your words come from a place that most people never go within. You were never meant to lead with volume. You were meant to lead with presence. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And you've earned that privilege, not by pretending, not by performing, but by turning inward, by doing the work most people avoid. You've sat in silence when the world shouted. You've healed what others buried. You've asked the hard questions, held your own pain, and walked through fire, not for applause, but for alignment. And that alignment, it radiates. That's why people trust you with their truth. Why they come to you when things fall apart. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've been there. You've felt the chaos, and you made it through. You're not driven by ego, you're guided by vision. And here's the thing, real leadership doesn't shout. It whispers, it listens, it holds space when others fall apart. It stands calmly in the storm and says, I've been through this. You're going to be okay. That's what you do. You don't inspire with slogans, you inspire with your stillness, your consistency, your clarity. While others chase attention, you create atmosphere. While others push to be followed, you give people the courage to lead themselves. And maybe you've been overlooked, misunderstood, even dismissed. But make no mistake, your quiet power has moved mountains in the hearts of those around you. Because you're not here to be famous, you're here to be found. By the people who need what only you can give: stability, truth, wisdom without the spotlight. You are the kind of leader this world desperately needs. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the truest. So the next time you feel unseen, remember this. Your leadership isn't measured by followers. It's measured by impact and the ripple effect of your quiet strength. It's changing more than you will ever know. You don't need a stage. You are the stage. You don't lead to be admired. You lead because you've learned how to carry light in the dark. And now you're passing that light on. If you've made it this far, you already know. You are not just an INFJ. You are not just an INTJ. You are not a label, a letter, or a number in some personality box. You are a living, breathing map of Jungian depth, a soul encoded with patterns, instincts, visions, and truths that most people never stop long enough to feel. You don't need to scream to be heard. You are the frequency that silence listens to. Your depth, it's not an accident. It's not something to hide or apologize for. It's your signature, your signal, your sacred design. You were never meant to fit into the noise. You were born to cut through it. And I know, it hasn't always been easy. You've been called too intense, too emotional, too serious. You've been told to lighten up, to be more normal, to stop reading into everything. But what they didn't realize is that you're not reading too deeply. You're seeing what's actually there. You've always felt the disconnect between what's said and what's felt. You've picked up on energy shifts no one acknowledged. You've known things before they happened. And for so long you may have thought that made you strange. But the truth is, it makes you rare. Because while the world is busy chasing likes, noise, and validation, you're chasing something else entirely. Alignment, meaning, truth, legacy. And you're not chasing it to be seen. You're chasing it to remember who you are and to live in a way that matters. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that is the journey you've been on all along. To not just perform a version of who you think you should be, but to reclaim the full truth of who you already are. The depth, the vision, the intuition, the emotions, the questions, the silence, the presence. It's not noise, it's navigation. You are not here to conform, you are here to lead. But not in the traditional sense, not by standing at a podium or wearing a crown. You lead through energy, through healing, through holding space, through modeling stillness in a world that can't sit still. You're not here to be the loudest voice, you're here to be the truest presence. And while that may have made you feel lonely at times, it's also the reason your presence shifts rooms. Because people don't just hear you, they feel you. And here's the truth most people will never tell you. You were never meant to be understood by everyone, because your mission was never meant for everyone. You were meant for those ready to wake up, to feel, to remember. You were meant for the ones quietly breaking under the pressure of pretending, the ones who long to be real but don't know how to begin. The ones who look at life and whisper, "There has to be more than this." You are the quiet reminder that yes, there is. And it begins by no longer apologizing for your depth, no longer shrinking so others feel more comfortable, no longer dimming your light to avoid being too much. You are not too much. You are exactly what this world has forgotten how to value. You are not broken, you are a compass. And now, it's time to anchor in that truth. This video, this message, wasn't just content. It was a mirror, a map, a signal. Because this isn't just a YouTube channel. It's a community of awake souls, a collective remembering. And if even one part of this message made your heart whisper, "That's me," then welcome. You're not alone. You never were. You just needed to hear it in a language your soul could understand. So here's your invitation. Don't water yourself down. Don't wait for approval. Don't seek to be understood by people who were never meant to meet your depth. Seek instead to be whole. Seek to be present. Seek to be aligned. Because the world doesn't need more polished masks or curated perfection. The world needs you. Your story, your clarity, your pain turned into wisdom, your silence turned into strength, your imagination turned into vision. This is your confirmation. You're not here to perform. You're here to remember, and if you feel called, share this message. Not to go viral, not for numbers, but because sometimes one voice, one video can help someone come home to themselves. We are not here to build platforms. We are here to build presence. So say it, type it, write it, whisper it to yourself. If you have to, I am not broken, I'm intuitive, I'm aligned, I remember who I am. And if you need a space where that truth is welcomed, protected, and celebrated, then you're already home. Because this isn't just a video, this is a soul signal. And if you felt it, you're part of it.